Ladies and gentlemen, once again it is time for wound care. I have now been instructed by the nurse to wash my wound in the shower. I have a wounded hand. This is a wet to dry bandage. And I am going to talk about donations. So here we have the wet section of the bandage. I'm going to place that on there. And this has got to soak for 10 minutes. So I don't think that's open. Generous helping of iodine there. Probably shouldn't use so much. We'll probably run out, but I don't even know if I'm really supposed to be using iodine. They used it in the hospital, but they didn't give me much of it. In the hospital, it was half iodine, half saline solution. Okay, that's a little too much, but I'll survive. Then we set ourselves a 10-minute timer. Alright. So I have some other things to do while I'm here, like take my blood sugar. But anyway, so the thing about donations, of course, is that I made a video about my return from the hospital, and I talked about the basic fact that I need my house remodeled. I don't have the money for it. It's expensive, of course. And, you know, like, what does one do? I can't seem to make enough money to do anything to my house. And, it's just one of those interesting facts, you know. It's a fact about my life is that I generally make enough to put a little bit away, but never enough to, you know, do things like have my bathroom remodeled, you know? And, like, my house needs to be gutted. It's totally screwed. Everything is too old. The wiring is so old it's about to start a fire. So, yeah, you know, and then somebody comes up and says, I wish I had money to give you. And, you know, that was a thing. Brought back some memories. Because this person commented on my YouTube video, which was all I could really ask for, you know? I mean, that's the thing. You want to help me. I don't want your money. I want the advertiser's money. To get that money, I need views, you know? Not enough blood. You're never supposed to reuse a lancet, by the way, even if you just used it. The reason being that the metal downgrades every time it pierces. So the more you use a lancet, the more the possibility that you could leave a piece of metal in your skin. There we go. It's nice and bloody. Okay. My blood sugar is 169. Okay. So anyway, I remember when I was a kid, I went to a Methodist church. My father made me. And they used to tell this story. This woman was very poor, but she wanted to donate to the church. All she had to her name was 2 pennies. And, you know, she went to the church and everybody else was putting in these bills. But she had her 2 pennies, so she gave her 2 pennies. And in that moment, God saw her. Because throwing those 2 pennies, at least that wasn't sharp, but throwing those 2 pennies into the collection plate meant that she had given all she could. And so, her donation was spiritually greater than those who gave thousands of dollars. They then cited the story of Jesus and the loaves of bread and the fish, and how he turned, 3 fish and 7 loaves of bread or something like that into a banquet for hundreds or thousands or something. Thing about this is that if all you could give me is 2 pennies, I'd rather you keep them. That would be what we refer to as greed. I am injecting insulin, by the way. I don't want the money of the poor. This has to stay in for 10 seconds. I don't want people to suffer so that I could have more. That's not what I want. And it's true that if I had money, I would be doing things like trying to find jobs I could hire my friends for. I actually have a friend now. His hobby is blacksmithing. And he is a devotee of Odin. And I was like, if I had money, I would open a bar called the Meat House, and I would have him blacksmith there. And of course, he would be a very happy man were this to happen. And he is otherwise in abject poverty, so either his trailer would have to be parked outside, or would have to build him a house or an apartment in the place so he could live there. That's the thing about the world we live in, is it's not a very nice place. And, bad things happen to good people. He's a good person. And that I know. But there's the truth. I do things. I have charity work myself. I feed orphans. And I buy, I pay for ocean cleanup. It's one of those things I do. And really, you know, I'm not going to have trouble finding or buying food. You could probably tell that. I'm not going to have trouble, you know, putting gas in my car. I have trouble with the far larger things in life, like getting a new car, you know, having things fixed. That's my trouble. And yeah, you know, it's annoying, but I don't want to take money from good people. It's not something I do. Now, I do have a fan or two who have the money to spare. And for them, yeah, all right, dude. I'd still rather make the money than, you know, have someone give it to me. I've had bad experiences with people giving me things. But, you know, that's the world we live in. You know, they say give what you can, but how much can you give? You should never give a charity any amount of money that will put you out. And the same goes for me. I know people with problems, and some of them give me money, and I don't wish they wouldn't. I accept it, of course. I'm not exactly sure how I would reject it, but I do accept it, and Google takes their cut. Remember that. You know, Google's going to take their cut. So in the end of the day, the best thing anyone can do for me is to watch my videos. Oh, there we are. Wish I could show you guys a close-up of this, but YouTube would not be happy. You know, the world we live in is ugly. One of the things about people in general is that Republicans who believe in self-reliance tend to live in rural areas where your reputation is more important. And Democrats tend to live in the bigger cities where you can get away with being a dick much more easily. What does that mean? It means our lives inspire who we vote for. Now, I know plenty of Trump supporters, though I'm not one myself. And when I worked with the homeless, I could tell you, I knew plenty of Trump supporters. Of course, one thing people knew with Joe Biden was that whatever they were doing, it wasn't working. But, you know, if a man could just work and get an honest day's pay, I wouldn't have any trouble. I work all the time. I found a way to make even changing my bandage into a video. But YouTube, well, that's not how YouTube works. Just because you worked doesn't mean you get paid. And I mean, you know, if it were like that, everyone on YouTube would just be a workaholic, working themselves to death. But that's not the world we live in. In any case, wound is patched. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. I'm Richard.
Danger Ducky says it is now time for you to comment, like, and subscribe, and support this channel so we can do things like save the world by removing trash from the ocean, planting trees, and feeding orphans. Danger Ducky approves.